we will call to order the regular Board of Education meeting of Monday, January 27th, 2025. Emily, will you take roll call, please?
Tracy? Here. Brian?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Ann?
Here. I will verify we do have quorum. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mark, will you read our mission statement, please?
Yes. Working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Thank you. Emily, was public notice of this meeting given?
Public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in district buildings and on the district website.
Thank you. Are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Yeah, just one. Just one, please. We'd ask to move number 13 to follow number 8, out of respect for our people who are here visiting.
Motion to approve the agenda as published with the following adjustment, moving item number 13 to follow agenda item 8.
I'll second that.
Motion by Aaron, seconded by Tracy to approve the agenda as published with the following exception, moving agenda item 13 to follow 8. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tonight's agenda is approved with that one change. We do not have any requests tonight for public input on the published agenda items, so we will move right to agenda item 13, which is our general obligation school facility improvement bonds. I'll have Janet.
We have Eric Cass here this evening from PMA to talk about the results from our bond sale today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate you moving me up. I actually have to head to Holman to do a similar presentation following this, so appreciate the opportunity. As Janet said, my name is Eric Cass, Director of Public Finance from PMA Securities, and wanted to walk through the sale results from the competitive sale we executed earlier today. Following that, you'll consider a formal resolution to lock in the financing. But before that, I want to make sure that you understand the process and have any questions answered that you may have this evening. If you could go to the next one. So I think my colleague Michelle Weiberg was here a few months ago and kind of talked about the approach. One of the things that was in that presentation was a little bit of history as it relates to interest rates. So this is kind of the one standard that we look at from the municipal market, and it's a 20-year history. You can see certainly a lot of volatility. I can tell you that recently we've seen a little downtick, which is evidenced in the results I'll talk about here in a minute. If you could go to the next slide, it's a little bit easier to see. So this is looking at interest rates using that same standard from January 1st, 24 all the way through January 24th, 2025. Clearly a lot of volatility over time, but if you go to the far right, since the inauguration, rates have actually dropped. So the municipal market has responded favorably to the new president. Not necessarily directly correlated, but that's certainly an inflection point that we sometimes see in the municipal market, and one thing that we were monitoring as it relates to the timing of the sale for the Onalaska School District. On the next slide, we're showing the results. So we executed a competitive sale in the marketplace this morning at 10:15, and we received very good response from the market. You highlighted up there is the winning bidder, which is UBS Financial Services at a 3.49% interest rate, which I'll talk a little bit more about as it relates to the overall financing plan for the district. But we received 9 total bids, which is extremely good. We normally average about 3 to 6, so a lot of favorable response in the marketplace. A lot of work goes into getting to that point from Janet and Emily and their team to get this district ready to go to market, and I think that's evidenced in the great response we saw with the interest rates that we received this morning. On the next slide, it's a little bit busy, but wanted to talk about the final financing plan. So over on the far left is existing debt that is not related to the November of 2022 referendum. So there are 2 small debt issuances outstanding, and that's the levy and expense related to those. Inside the box is the final structure for the $75 million that was borrowed. Initially, the first issuance was done and refunded in April of 2023, and then again, the final issuance here this evening for your consideration for $25 million. A couple things to highlight as it relates to this plan. In working with Janet and the team, she pushed us pretty hard to minimize the long-term interest expense related to the debt issuance of the $25 million. And so we actually are amortizing that over 19 years, which is 1 year shorter than state statute allows. Putting that into context, it's about $2.5 million of interest savings to the school district by lopping off that year. And really the bogey that we were focused on that I'll point your attention to is on the far right in that box. So by doing so, we're able to keep the repayment levy stable at $6.1 million, which almost exactly mimics the levy set forth in the fall of 2024. So long-term stability from a levy standpoint and some good interest saving back to the district in relation to the structure as well as the interest rate that we received earlier today. Finally, just some highlights on the next slide to inform the conversation. This is the last issuance related to the November 2022 referendum of $25 million. It is for projects associated with the question that was approved. The closing date is February 18th, so the sale date is today, but it takes a good 2 to 3 weeks for all of the legal paperwork to shuffle back and forth and all the signatures to be verified. So the funds will actually be in hand for the district's use on February 18th, 2025. Principal maturity dates will be April of 2026 through 2043, so again, 19 years. The first interest payment will be this fall, utilizing funds that were levied this past fall. First interest October 1st, 2025. The call date will be April 1st, 2033. So all debt outstanding after 2033 will become callable, which provides flexibility for future boards to either refund if interest rates are lower or pay that debt off without any penalty at that point in time. The district did receive a stable credit rating from Moody's, which is a key piece of going to market, of AA3, and the outlook continues to look favorable for the school district in relation to that. And then finally, the interest rate there at the bottom is a 3.49, which again is very favorable long-term for the district. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Eric, you mentioned that the typical number of folks that bid is between 3 and 6, and we have between 6 and 9, and you explained some really good reasons why we have that. Is there any other reason why we would be particularly attracted to that degree of additional bidders?
Other than what I highlighted, I think that January and February are always very favorable in the municipal market. December is kind of a slow period. A lot of people are taking off, and a lot of investors accumulate a lot of cash in the first quarter of the calendar year. So normally January and February are very favorable in terms of activity in the market, would be the other one that I didn't highlight earlier.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I would just add that I appreciate all that hard work, Janet, Eric. I think that shows that we're more than good custodians of the community's money. We're excellent. So, Jen, I know a lot of that's your hard work, so thank you, and thank you for that as well. Those savings, as you articulated that, and due to the foresight and math, it's just really impressive to see.
And Janet, I think that you had stated in an update to us recently that our credit rating is essentially the same as it has been for a while. No real changes there.
Correct. We were shooting for a AA2, which is a little bit better, which would have saved us a little bit more interest. But we were not successful on getting that. But I think the next time we go to issue bonds, I'm confident that we can make that happen.
Thanks.
What is the pleasure of the board? We need to read the resolution. We need to read that.
You do not. No, you just need a motion.
Note the, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2000. Motion to approve resolution number 2025-001, which is a resolution warning sale of $25 million general obligation school facility improvement bonds, series 2025.
Second.
Motion by Aaron, seconded by Sean, to approve Resolution 2025-001, the sale of $25 million general obligation school facility improvement bonds. as presented by Mr. Cass and outlined in the presentation and enclosures numbered 13. Are there any questions or additional comments? Thank you. Yes, can we take a roll call on this, please?
Aaron,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Anne.
Yes, that motion is approved with much appreciation for your presentation. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. And thank you, Janet, very much for all the work you put into this. Right. We have some recognition items tonight, obviously, that are due for celebration, but I'll turn this also over to you.
Yes, we have three recognitions for donations. $1,000 for Irving Perch Multilingual Learners Program from Robert George. He does this each year for our multilingual learners. Approximately $2,500 in food for the Northern Hills Elementary Reading Night from Dahl Abra Auto Body, and $1,852.49 from the Office Depot School Supply Drive for school needs at Northern Hills Elementary.
As always, I'm just floored at the generosity of individuals such as Mr. George and as well as businesses, Dahl, Abra Auto Body, Office Depot, familiar businesses who think of our schools when they're collecting or willing to donate money. It's really just pretty spectacular. So we thank all of the, Mr. George and those two businesses for continuing to think of us in their seasons of giving, and it is much appreciated. All right, our student representative, administrator, and tonight we will have some board members and Mr. Finko report out on the board convention last week. So we'll start with Leah. Congratulations to you and the dance team. I see you guys are headed to state in multiple events, so I'm going to let you brag about that. Congratulations.
So this past weekend, the dance team did have a big success at the Northern Regionals. We placed champions in jazz and fourth place in so we're qualified to go to state in both. We also placed higher than some teams that we've never placed higher than before, so it's a great feeling. And also, our amazing show choir program also won grand champion at their last competition, which is amazing. They've been doing very well this season, I do know. And one thing about sports at Onalaska and any activities or music programs is the goal is to have 75% of our student body to be included in some sort of music program, club, sport activity, just to feel included and just to feel like a hilltopper, essentially. And one thing I've noticed about being part of various activities myself is that not only do I feel included in Onalaska, I feel like I have sort of a safe family to be a part of within my sports and activities. I also joined track last year spontaneously, and I still felt included there even though I'm not a runner and it was my first year. So Onalaska does a very good job at representing their activities in sports with the right morals and the right goals. Coaches are so welcoming, and they definitely know how to put passion in their athletes and direct them towards passion over aggression and anger towards their sports. So yes, I would love to highlight that part of the weekend and Onalaska in general.
Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot from someone who's in the trenches, as they say, because doing that on top of being a student is not easy work. Regardless of what extracurricular you're involved in, it's just that, it's extra stuff. So it's good to hear that, and we appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Leah, are any of our dancers also performing solos this weekend?
Oh yes, the two seniors are, which is me and the other captain, Megan. We're both performing our all-state solos. So, yeah.
I thought she'd forget to include herself.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Leah. At the conclusion of first semester, we've had, looking at our first semester grade data, 92% of our students passed all courses for first semester and 94% passed all their core courses. So thinking about a big step in our action plan for our strategic plan, thinking about moving kids toward graduation achievement, first semester was absolutely outstanding and probably one of our highest semesters that we've had in terms of student success.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jared, do you have, or I'm sorry.
Yeah. This Sunday is kind of a highlight for the band programs, as it's our district-wide band program, Sunday afternoon at the high school, and it's ran very efficiently, I would say, by our directors, but it's also a great way for our entire band community to come together in one spot to play some great music. So that's kind of a celebration every year. It's coming up this week.
Thank you. Middle school.
Yes. So I know a few of you were able to make it to our winter concerts 2 weeks ago, since our last board meeting here. They were fantastic in our new gym space. One thing that we tried new for the first time this year was live streaming. I know I mentioned that a little earlier, but we live streamed our winter concerts, and thinking we might have 50 people or so tune in. But thanks to Nick's help, we had over 550 people tune in to our concerts, and had some, unsolicited emails from parents saying thank you so much. Grandparents from Illinois and from here and there, everywhere, Minnesota, were able to tune in and watch the concerts and actually rewind and if they were late and missed it. So that was a fantastic thing, just from the belonging engagement. We recently, with Kelly McMahon's guidance and help, and thanks to, I know, something that was passed several meetings ago here with a partnership with the Ho-Chunk Nation's Education Center, we have, I think, 2 or 3 students now who have started getting some academic supports through their education center at school. And so that is a collaboration and partnership that we're looking forward to. I know last time, I think I told you we had a new club starting up, the Crochet Club. I stopped by last week to check on them, hoping for a new sweater, but I think we're a little bit away from that yet. So we're going to start small. But we got another new club starting up that, again, that came, just like the Crochet Club, came from student interest in reaching out, and there was a faculty member who was willing to sponsor it, so we're going to be starting a Dungeons and Dragons Club. So that starts, I think, next week. So that's our updates.
Fantastic. Thank you. Lish, are you doing
Yes,
elementary?
it is me today. Thank you. We are also looking forward at the elementary to have the dance team coming to read with our students this week. Ahead of their dance clinic that they host on February 8th. They always come over to the elementary and spend some time with our kids. So got that organized today with Mr. Thierry, and excited to see them. A lot of positive feedback from our staff about our PD last Monday. Shout out to Kelly McMahon for all of her work coordinating all of that. The staff really continue to love the ability to perform community service as one of their options on that day. Kelly has grown the options from where we started just trying it out a couple years ago. And the documentaries that were hosted and the presentations at Viterbo were also just excellent. Excellent speakers, excellent things just to help make us think a little bit more about how that's impacting us as we teach and our children as they come to us. We are finishing up our winter benchmarking assessments and looking at the growth that our students are making. We're getting really excited to celebrate some of that with you next time as we share our strategic plan updates. And Dr. Burns mentioned the music concerts. We had music concerts at Northern Hills as well. Just some fun themes with our students, dancing and singing, little winter themes, or we did a whole around the year with one of our concerts where they started at the beginning of the school year and went all the way around to Mother's Day and summer as well, which was nice to look forward to spring and nicer weather when it was so cold. We have music concerts coming up then for our kindergarten and 5th grade in May. Perch has their concerts coming up the first week of February, and then their kindergarten and fifth in May as well, and Eagle Bluff's concert's coming up shortly after that in March. So exciting to share all of their success in the arts. At Northern specifically, we have our family reading night on Thursday, as you heard. Very grateful for that donation for the meal. We also are having the donated use of an igloo, so I will be reading in an inflated igloo, not one made of snow. But I will be pretending that I'm very cold in the igloo. And then we have our PTO hosting a family movie night on Friday as well. And then I shared last time that I had my student rounding conversations coming up again, and they really appreciated the multiple hot lunch choices. They were excited about that, so all good stuff about that. And overall, they said that they really love Northern Hills. The only thing that makes them unhappy is if they're too tired or their morning routine was interrupted. So we problem solved some things around that, and it was good to work on some strategies to help them. So we'll hand it off to Abby.
So January 26th, yesterday, is International Kawasaki Disease Awareness Day. It's a disease that typically affects students, or kids, excuse me, under the age of 5, causes inflammation in blood vessels, and then can lead to heart disease. So I'm sharing this with you because today I was invited to be an audience to a student who presented about the disease because they were diagnosed earlier this year, missed some time from school, and then were able to kind of reflect with their family, and then create a presentation that they could share with their class. So it's just a really neat opportunity for that student to share and answer questions with their classmates, but then also raise awareness. So.
All right, at Eagle Bluff, last Friday, our PTO sponsored our family movie night in the gym. So it was fun to get together and watch the Super Mario Brothers movie together. Tomorrow we have a science fair, and we have about 40 projects, I think at last count, maybe a couple more than that, that are going to be on display. And we have some Alaska High School students that are going to be giving some feedback to our kids on their projects. So that's become an annual event, and we have a wonderful coordinator of that, Elizabeth Witzik, part of our PTO, that helps us get that going every year as well. And finally, we had student rounding sessions as well, and recently, and we tend to find some things that that we can work on as a school. For a while, we worked on what did kids notice? Blurting. They noticed that there was a lot of blurting going on in their classrooms. So we worked on that and talked about that as a school. And as we came back this time, no, they thought that blurting was getting better in their classes. And they also thought, and this was really good because we had talked about this too, that we're doing better with our substitutes. Sometimes, that can be challenging when we have subs, and so we want our subs to come back to our school. So we are happy to hear that we're doing better with our substitutes at school. So student rounding, always a pleasure to hear student perspectives on things, and really lots of positives from that too.
Fantastic. As always, lots of real positive, good things going on. Thank you for sharing.
I have a question. And a comment. I just want to say too, it's very impressive to me that you guys are continuing to keep the students engaged in their learning and their school environment by asking them how they're doing, and then, taking that feedback and actually implementing it. That says a lot that you listen to what they had to say and you follow through. That helps build, the trust in your environment. I mean, that's so cool. The question I have too, though, is to Ben. So, with that live streaming of the concert, do you know, you said Nick helped with that. Is that something that they're looking to implement throughout the other schools? Did he say anything to that? Or was there any follow-up from that?
So he said he was willing to help us anytime. And so at the middle school, we kind of have a long-range goal of trying to get one competition per sport per year. Trying to work up to that, as well as with our 2 big music concerts a year. It's kind of a benchmark that we had. I know at the high school, they've already been doing, I think, some live streaming here and there. You guys could obviously speak more to it for years. I think you guys have been, and I don't know about the elementary level, but it was just something that we wanted to try and give it a go. And now that we have a communications director here, somebody that can really help, that knows how to make it happen, in addition to just having the idea.
I think it just helps expand our community. I mean, that just, to have family members that hypothetically across the country could participate and be there for their kids, their family members, it just shows how engaged we are and how important the families and the community is to us, that we want to, you know, get them involved. So that's super cool. I really appreciate that you were willing to try that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. As I indicated, 3 board members, along with Sonia and Fran, attended the annual convention last week down in Milwaukee. As always, it was really cold. But I felt, you know, a really good opportunity to network, not only with our colleagues here, but colleagues from all over the state, really. So we want to give folks an opportunity to kind of report out on some of the breakouts, keynotes, whatever, a few highlights. So if I can put you on the spot, Sonia, I'll start with you.
You bet, sure. So 2 things that I would point out is, one, I had the luxury, I guess, to present it as a keynote, or not as a keynote, at a breakout session. We had partnered with our workers' comp carrier to have a breakout on sensory breaks within the classroom. So we shared a little bit about our para summit, and that we're in our 3rd year of this, and how it has helped with training our paras on behaviors in the classroom and how to respond. And our workers' comp carrier was one of the most highly rated topics within our para summit. So she kind of presented the topic that she shared with our paraprofessionals. From my own professional development, I felt these were some of the best breakout sessions that I have had at the convention. The one that I found the most helpful was actually through Lodi School District. They were hiring a foreign national. And I have experience with the H-1B visa, which is very cumbersome, but there's other visa options. And so they went through the student visa, J-1 visa, and how they hired a teacher from Chile, and how brought him to a small district of Lodi. And although we're not in a dire need that we're there, it's always good to be proactive and learn if we ever need to be at that point.
Thank you.
You want me to go? Sure, yeah. You know, first I just wanted to comment on what Leah said about student participation, and completely different topic, but just watching the live stream of the Martin Luther King presentation in the evening at Viterbo last week, and one of our students received an award from one of those organizations, and you know, he had a moment to speak, and he talked about that. He talked about the involvement in school. He talked specifically about show choir and Mr. Moses being so accepting and supportive of all students. So that was great. The convention, great stuff. I made an attempt to go to a lot of the CISA booths around the state, really just kind of to get a sense of what they offer statewide, because each CISA has some specialties that they focus on. So that was interesting. Went to one which was called using a theme of 5 voices, and it was really a pretty intense kind of self-reflection on how individually we function as a school board member, and also how other people look at us, and how we function as a school board member. So that was very interesting. At least one related to board governance, which is probably something that we don't talk about enough, but kind of defining the roles and refreshing those ideas. And it was 3 school districts kind of in the Madison area, surrounding Madison, each kind of at different points of using board governance. So some were just kind of starting, some had been doing it for several years. So that was a good refresher, some really good information there. You know, and we're talking a lot about social media and the live streaming, and, you know, I went to one specific session related to that. And it actually was kind of a common theme through many of the sessions that I went to. It's just becoming so important for districts to really focus on that, to communicate with our overall community. And it's so fantastic, again, validating that we have Nick, our communications and engagement director. I also went to a session put on by the Department of Justice, the Office of Student Services, I believe it is, OSS. Kind of a personal reason to go there, because it was really focused on that incident that occurred in Mount Horeb, which is where my grandchildren live. It was very interesting to hear from Mount Horeb Board President, Superintendent, the people from the Department of Justice who operate those services, and seeing what things are available to districts when that sort of thing happens, or even, proactively. So that was very, very interesting. I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everyone for letting me go. It was it's great to be around other like-minded people, other board members. We went to the same one, and it was interesting because Lodi, to engage the community, they do a video once a year to get back to school, and then the 10th year they did Guardians of the Galaxy, so they showed that one. It was pretty cool. Went to a couple sessions on AI, found it really interesting. They said that AI will not replace humans, it will replace humans that don't use AI. So you need to embrace AI, which we all do. And then I went to the delegate assembly. We talked about two resolutions. 25004 was about decoupling. That was not passed. A lot of conversation. There was an amendment to try to get it broken out on people's taxes. That was shot down also. So in the end, it didn't carry. And then the other one was 25008, and that was on the report card. A lot of conversation on that again, and that was voted down also because it was only growth, and it was for the district, and we want to be broken out by buildings. I did bring back all the resolutions, WASB resolutions, and maybe we could leave that in the conference room if anyone wants to look at that. That's all I have.
Also, I want to thank everybody in the district community for supporting our, our own continuous development by allowing us to go. I agree with Sonia. It was really one of the best that I've been to. The breakout sessions were all pertinent and engaging. If you've heard me talk before, the breakout sessions are sort of done in tracks, and so as always, I'm passionate about community engagement, so did go to a breakout session on community engagement and some things that it's always good to hear what other districts are doing. It was a Salem school district, which is a K-8, which of course is different from us, but got some really good ideas and potential things. One thing that I always learn down there too is that we're good. I mean, I'm always very, in talking to other districts and, talking to other, board members who are like, kind of cranky about stuff. We're very fortunate that, our strategic plan is in a good place. We have the right people in the right seats on the bus, and so we're doing a lot of good here. So I know that, and then it's always reconfirmed when I go down there. Some of the other that were pertinent to us, the Reimagine and Revitalize Superintendent Evaluation Framework that WASB has, that may be something that we'll look at as we move into this next chapter of our story. I also went to a couple breakouts on AI, something as a teacher that I'm very interested in, but although they had a lot of breakout sessions, they covered both sides of it. They talked about the legal policy, that type of stuff, as well as kind of opening up what's out there and how quickly it's changing. I think somebody said, the worst AI is going to be is today, and then it gets better every day. What I'm happy to hear is there also is a lot of conversation and discussion about student data privacy. There's an actual alliance out there that, requests a lot of these AI companies to basically to commit to keeping student data safe, which in turn keeps our students safe as well. So, yeah, it was a really good conference. I appreciated the opportunity.
It was definitely one of the best I've been to. Just a couple, the keynote address, the Clint Swindell was the person who gave it on Wednesday, and he talked about improving culture to improve culture by improving employee engagement, okay? And he talked about how 30% of your employees are engaged, 53 are actively disengaged, are disengaged, and 17% are actively disengaged. They did a study. And he said the actively disengaged are the people that see the negative in everything. And then he described them as, it's the person the bartender asks to leave the bar so that they can begin happy hour, right? Because it's just a downer all the time. They're always trying to, but he talked about, he said every day you show up to work, you're either adding or taking away from the culture of your district. And there's no middle ground, right? And so as leaders, we need to be able to work through that and set good examples by talking about the good stuff, the celebrations. I went to a session on first-year board members. Interesting, they had table of new board members facilitating a discussion on building relationships with other board members and the superintendent. Things that they talked about was understanding Robert's Rules of Order, the positive of having a board mentor, positive of working in committees and small groups with other board members to get to know them, and then the frustration of wanting to step in and wanting to make a difference right away, and the frustration of not necessarily knowing how to do that and how to get the rest of the board to buy in. And then the last thing that was a struggle for them was, what do we do when people from the community approach us and want to talk to us about school issues? How do we deal with that? So that was from new board member sessions. I went to one on board relationships, superintendent board relationships, the second one, and the things that came out of there were to remember that when we leave the meeting, we leave with one voice. And another district, there were 3 districts represented. The second district said, we talk about similar things, but what we say is, where we go together. So it's talking about, you can have your opinions and stuff, but when we leave, we go together. And he challenged a board, it was a board president, he challenged board members. He said, if you want to know something about yourself during a board meeting, just turn on the video and shut off the volume, so you can see your body language as things are going on through the evening or through the meeting. So I thought that was interesting. At a legislative update, they talked about WSB is lobbying for 60% funding for special ed funds. Right now it's reimbursed at 32%. And opposed to voucher school grant funding reimbursement is close to 100%. And how that was something they wish they could improve. And then the future legislation possibilities, cell phone restrictions, requiring a computer science credit, mandating cursive writing, bringing back the Office of School Safety and Funding, and then easing regulations so that districts have a easier time hiring retired teachers back. So, and then the final keynote, just to top it off, was the former superintendent from Fall Creek. And he just had a couple of quotes. He was just energetic as all get out. But he said, if you don't share good news with people, people will think of your schools in terms of what happened to them when they were in school. And he said, you can't change what people think about you. You can't unless you work on the good stuff. And you give them good memories so that the old bad memories can go away. And so I thought that was a great way to end it. He was pretty high energy, and And it was a great conference, and I appreciated you guys having me go too. So, thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, and we also got to listen to the governor's speech,
Yes.
his State of the Kid speech, and his budget proposals. And I guess I have one other comment. Every year when I have gone, you sit in those large general sessions with hundreds of people from across the state. It's just so awesome to see these people that are committed to public education in Wisconsin. It's amazing.
Well, and the number of people who've done it for 20, 25, 30 years is impressive. You know, just Fran and I were talking to a gentleman from a nearby district who is retired, and his, you know, he wanted to give back. That's what he saw his mission was, and his philosophy and approach to what he was doing, and the collaboration with his other board members, and everybody's bringing their voice to the table. It's just, yeah, it's good to, it's re-energizing for sure.
It is, yeah. That makes me think back to one of the earliest conventions I went to when they give those awards for 20 years and whatever. There was a gentleman who had served on his school board for 50 years. That's a big commitment.
Yeah. All right, so we're on to continued exciting stuff, the middle and high school building updates. Do you want to go first, Jared?
Sure, and I think there's an attachment. The big focus has been in two different areas. The East Addition, which is pictured on the screen, the roof joists were put on last week, as well as the steel decking, so that's been exciting to see the roofs going on. And then if we go down a little further, we'll see that more of the work that's happening within that East Addition. It's exciting to see Tech Ed renovated. It's by far the most dated part of this building, maybe the district, and to see the facelift it's getting is awesome. If we keep going down, the elevator room is essentially complete, other than the finishing touches with it. The elevator will be installed in about a month to 6 weeks, and then the elevator, the outside, the brick is almost done on that portion of it. If we keep going down, the mezzanine bleacher progress started yesterday and is continuing through the end of this week in preparation for Sunday's all district band concert. So those are coming out, and then the gym storage addition is nearly complete. I know they're hoping that that's going to be done in the next 48 to 72 hours. That's it for the high school.
So at the middle school, I'll kind of walk through the pictures first here. So these are pictures of the southeast wing, and these are actually outdated. They've been putting up the walls of the second level, the second story, which will be the 8th grade classroom. And then if we go down, that's just a same thing from a different angle. This is the hallway outside of the new band room where all the instrument storage, or half of the instrument storage, will be. And this is a picture of inside the band room. I think the one on the right there is a practice room. The one on the left, because it has the window, is an office for one of our 2 band teachers. This is a shot of our new gymnasium. You can see the nice OMS branding on the bleachers there. And this is the choir risers that were set up on the tarps to protect the new floor in the gymnasium for our winter concert. It was kind of like a 3-ring circus. We had choir, band, and orchestra all lined up. It had space for all 3 of them, and then some to spare. This is the old office, the old administration area office that they've gotten started on the demo in there. And so it doesn't look anything like it used to. Yeah, it never looked better, Roger says, yeah. This is just a close-up of one of the new practice rooms for band, and I'm hoping they're insulated very well. And, I think that's the end of it. So our major news, of course, is into the new gymnasium. And so not only the concert, but now PE classes are in there every day, as well as indoor recess has now switched to the new gymnasium. And as my elementary colleagues, I'm sure, can attest, even just a little bit less chaotic is super helpful for indoor recess, and so that's been a nice bonus as well. The next big piece that we're looking to about a month from now is that new band room and multipurpose room, having that finished and moving them over into there. That's kind of our next milestone coming up.
Well, and we appreciate, I'm sure you saw most of us running in here close to the start of our meeting for the tour before we came over. The pictures don't really do it justice after walking through. But, I mean, both projects are just so incredibly exciting for our community. It's just awesome. So something that I appreciate that we're walking through the updates, but important to celebrate them every week too, so. All right, Janet has our quarterly financial report. We have enclosure 12.
Okay, this is an update for the second quarter, but as you know. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. This is an update through December 31st of the current year. You remember, we're actually a quarter of the year through the budget before we even adopt our budget. So we don't do a quarter one update because we just adopted the budget. We do our first one now as we have finished the December 31st. On this chart, you will see we show our need for fund balance and what's happening with cash flow. So the things that you want to pay attention to here is we've got 2 years. I added that this year to just give you a better perspective of how are we changing year over year. And what you want to see, it's kind of hard to see from the standpoint of like we're looking at big dollar amounts, but yet if you see the numbers changing very much from year to year, you want to know why. And so looking, the lighter colors are last year's data and the darker colors are this year's data. And you can see our biggest gyration is in August and September, and the reason for that is last year we had 3 payrolls in August. This year our 3 payrolls are in September, so you would expect to see those reversed. But then after that, you can see we're kind of ticking right up. I like to see that when we get to December, you're not really seeing a big difference in those lines between those 2 years, and that's going to be important as a couple budget items that we're going to be talking about with the board a little bit later in the agenda. But that was one of the things that we went through to analyze whether or not we even bring those suggested changes to you. So that's important. This chart just kind of shows from a budget perspective, with our interfund transfers eliminated, where does our revenue come from? And you can see for the most part, 86% of our budget is coming from state and local. And primarily that's revenue limit factors, so local taxes and state equalization aid. And then the next big chunk on there is Wisconsin Interdistrict, that's 10%, and that's primarily our open enrollment funding that we receive. When we look at where we are as of December 31st, again, remember, we're halfway through the year looking at that bottom line, looking as a percent of our revenue that has come in, 15%. So our revenue does not come in any kind of correlation to where we are in the fiscal year. But one of the things that you want to look at is how does the money that we brought in last year compare to this year, 15.6 to 15.5. Then looking at, so that's looking good, a little bit less, and that is because we're relying more on taxes this year than we were last year. So when we are getting more of our money in state equalization aid, we're getting more of that money throughout the year. Our taxes, as you know, first settlement comes in January, then February, January for people that pay their taxes in December, January for those that pay in February for those that pay in January, and then August for those that pay in July. So our fiscal year is literally finished before we get in our second property tax settlement. So on this, when you look at the budget, operating transfer in, remember that is for the amount that we do not get reimbursement from the state in funding for special education. So at the end of the year, because we We don't tax in Fund 27, we do a transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27. So about $4.8 million will be the local support for special education. You can see in the local revenue by budget, that's primarily taxes, and as I said, we don't have money in there yet. What the money that we do have in is for admissions, student fees, interest. Those are the things that make up those amounts, and we're slightly up this year as compared to last year. Actually, maybe I'll step back a minute and just kind of highlight the columns on this chart, and they'll carry through on the other ones. So first column, obviously, budget this year compared to last year. So looking at how does that change year over year? Then how does our activity change year over year? Then what percent of our activity have we received or spent compared to the whole budget? And then what is that variance? When we're looking at our year-to-dates, what are those variances? And then how can we explain them, and do they make sense to us? So for the Wisconsin Inter-School District, that is basically our open enrollment. We get that money in June. So we educate our students all year long, and then we'll receive that payment in June from a transfer from the state. State revenue, you can see, is up in budget. That is two primary reasons. Our state equalization aid and computer aid are both projected to go up. Our federal revenue, you can see a pretty drastic downtick in the revenue and budget for the projected budget, and that's because the ESSER funding is running out. The ESSER funding expired in September of this year, so you can see we made a mad dash to spend all of those funds out, and that's the reason why that's a little bit higher this year compared to last year. But then you're going to see that as we go through the year, that year to year activity is going to change pretty dramatically. And then in other funding sources, we received quite a bit more last year than this year, and the reason for that is we received some funding for E-rate. Remember, we did some big network upgrades a while back, and then we submit those for E-rate reimbursement, and then we get those fundings in. So then, looking at how does our budget compare to actual when we're looking at what we've received to date? So do we see some symmetry in the two graphs? We really don't in this one at all. You can see there's no dark purple, so local taxes, we basically have nothing at this point in time. And then that inter-district funding for open enrollment, so it's basically just our first state aid payment has made up nearly 100% of our revenue to date. Then looking at our expenses by object, this is budget. And again, our interfund transfers are reduced in this. And you can see that 74% is salary and benefits. The next big chunk is purchase services. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I get to the next chart, but you can see that that's a significant amount, and those are things for just purchase services, our contracts, transportation, utilities, vouchers. Our voucher payments are included in that as well. So looking at our expenses, we're going to look at our expenses two ways, one by object, one by function. Think of the object as the by what? What's this for? And then again, looking at that bottom line, we're halfway through the year, we're about 30% on our expenditures. You would expect that because when you think of July, August, September, school's not in session. And so a lot of the expenses that are happening in those early periods are just to get us ready for school. We're down slightly in our salary for teachers. I expect to see that be leveling out when we have our next reporting. Your employee benefits are pretty much right on target. Our purchase services and educational payments, you can see there's a bigger upswing on this, and it's because we're required to make some changes in how we code things. So we code things according to what's called Woofer, and it's a set of codes so that schools across the state can be compared to one another. Our payments for things like when we have contractors come in and fix things that, like as an example, when we did the boiler at Eagle Bluff, back last year and the year before, it was kind of a 2-year project. We put those in capital projects in the past because we're replacing a big ticket item. Now what we're supposed to do is, because we're hiring somebody to do it, those things go into purchase services. So that's why we're going to see kind of some wonkiness, if you will, for some time until that kind of works its way through the system, because last year was the old way and this year will be the new way. And you can see when you look at the capital objects, there's a significant difference between last year and this year. But what is in that purchase service, it'd be a lot of contracted services. Another thing that we're seeing a lot more of is software. Textbooks are being replaced with software subscriptions, and we're seeing a lot more of that. Those will all be in that purchase services and educational payments. The rest of it is pretty on par for this time of year when comparing this year and last year. Then looking at how we spend our funds by object, the what, and looking at how does that compare with budget. And you can see this graph looks a little bit more symmetrical. It's smaller, but it doesn't look that far out of whack. Now we're going to be looking at our expenses by function. That's the what for. And 67% of our budget is direct student interactions with instruction, our student services for our counselors and people like that work directly with our students, co-curricular activities. The big chunk in there besides those is business administration. That'd be our transportation, utilities, those contracted services that I was talking about earlier. So now looking at comparing year over year and our percentages, obviously same amount of expenditure because we're just looking at those expenditures in a different way. The co-curricular activities looks a little wonky here, and that is, the reason for that is because the Boys and Girls Club ESSER grant was, after-school grant was required to be coded in that co-curricular area. So you can see from the budget year to year, because that budget now is going to be in Fund 80. So that's the reason why that looks different from a budget perspective, but yet from spending out the grant, because we spent it out by June 30th, so the expenditures look high there. The general administration is higher, and that is a bunch of technology things that we have implemented, as well as some contracted services, and then the large capital projects. Our purchase instructional and educational payments is up slightly, and that is because of the 4K partner payments. Then looking at our expenditures by function, same thing here. Those graphs kind of look similar, but they're just at a reduced amount. And then when we will be looking at this next, each month, second meeting of the month, you get our financials in your board report, and then that goes through fund by fund, and then you also obviously get all of the registers from all of the checks that we write. And then we also will do the third quarter budget monitoring on the second meeting in April to take us through March 31st. So with that, can I answer any questions?
Jen, I have a quick one. Something you mentioned on slide 7 just caught my ear. We were talking about purchase services. You mentioned the kind of the transition of textbooks into like software. Is that transitioning also to like a subscription model?
Correct.
Okay. Do we see the expenses being similar to what we would see in a hardcover book? Is it lower?
It's almost exactly the same. They've kind of like spread it out over time, so it doesn't, before you'd purchase textbooks and you'd have this gigantic purchase, and I think when things first started becoming digital, people were like, okay, maybe the price will decrease. They figure out how to spread it out over time, but you're still basically paying the same amount, and then that goes up with inflation each year.
I think it's just something to watch, like as we analyze, those changes year over year, because you could certainly see that start to change disproportionate to inflation as well, depending on what they're offering and how those, textbooks, if you will, get modulated with technology enhancements and those types of things.
The cool thing about it is that they're updated in real time. So when you buy a textbook, you have that textbook for 5 to 7 years, whereas like the digital subscriptions are being updated constantly, and then usually you have a juncture with like every 3 years or 5 years to be able to reassess. Is it still meeting the needs? Is it does it help us deliver the curricular outcomes that we have with students, things like that? So while it's being updated over time.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of advantages to the model. Switching costs are probably lower than as well as a result of that. And I think it's something like financially that we have to now like tune our ears to, because we're seeing that kind of as a running expense concern as opposed to a periodic purchase, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then I would say too, another thing that you've been doing is looking to see how can we, with all of these subscriptions, how can we consolidate? And so we don't have a plug-in for every different thing out there, and we do more things that basically a one-stop shop that can meet more of our needs.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Janet? Right. Thank you.
Oops, I have more. Yep. Sorry.
All right, we're going to stick with Janet to talk about the pole vault system replacement. We have enclosure 14.
Yes, so Jason and coaches, track team coaches have done a great job of doing the background work on this. This is not over the threshold that we would normally bring this to the board for your approval. However, we're bringing it to for your approval because we didn't have this as part of our budget process when we adopted the budget. So just to be fully transparent, we wanted to make sure that we brought it forward to you. We're asking for, as I said earlier, based on how we are looking for the budget for the next 2 items, this is the reason we're bringing them to you. We're comfortable bringing them to you based on where we're at with budget so far. But we would like to replace this just from a safety perspective. The system that we have is worn. The coaches have done, in this document that I laid out as an attachment, is from the coaches, from the standpoint of the work that they did to bring the proposal to us, to ask us, Jason and I, to bring this to you. And I don't know, Jason, if you have any additional comments that you would like to add?
No, just the fact that the one we currently have is 15 years old, and that's about the lifespan of a pole vault pit. And as we all know, pole vaulting is pole vaulting, right? There's kids going up in the air and coming back down, and we certainly want to make sure we have, up-to-date equipment. Not to say the equipment we have isn't usable. It is, but it's also time for probably a refresher. And like I say, Coach Wallenfing and Coach Sauerman did a great job of reaching out, getting multiple bids. And the company that we're recommending tonight is very reputable in pole vault equipment.
That was going to be my question, because when I looked at this, like the discrepancy in cost between the one that's being proposed versus the others that don't include mats, is it just kind of like name brand, or like what's the difference that the cost is so much different?
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
It's still gonna meet your needs, whatever
Sure.
you're proposing.
Yes, for sure, yep.
I was just making sure there wasn't like compromise or something between the bids, because they were so different.
No, Ritchie, BSN, and Gill, those are all the main companies in the world of pole vaulting. And Ritchie, I don't have the answer of why they have
Sure.
what I would call a nice bid for us. That include the outer mats. But I'm satisfied with what the quote that they offered.
Perfect, thank you.
That's a good question, because I had the same, I was like, well, it has mats, which to me seems like you should always have mats included in the
Right.
thing. So, yeah, thanks for asking.
Will these be ready for this track season?
If the board approved tonight, I would order it, put the purchase order in tomorrow. It looks like it would be here at the beginning of April. So we may have a week or two there where we're still using the old system, but we would definitely be getting the new system in. And then whatever happens with the stadium project moving forward, that was a question too we talked about. The systems are able to move, lift them up and put them to wherever the new area would be for pole vault.
So there's somebody, like, we already have somebody who's gonna be able to set this up?
Correct, yeah. So the mats, everything will get delivered on a truck, and our coaches would set everything up.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the request for a new pole vault system as outlined in 14 pole vault.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Eric, to approve the request to replace the pole vault system at the high school, as outlined in enclosure 14 pole vault. Are there any questions or additional comments?
Do a roll call, please.
Yes, can we do a roll call, Emily?
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Ann.
Yes, that request is approved. Thank you. All right, and then you've already referenced this other one, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, and
for
hopefully
the-
this is our last budget, our budget request for the year. But we are bringing forward a request to upgrade at the elementary schools, the door access systems. We had, for the middle school and the high school, we upgraded both cameras and doors as part of the referendum project. Not all of that is installed, but it will be all installed by the time that the remodeling project is finished, just depending on where they're at with the buildings is where we're at for that replacement. This, what we're asking you for is not the replacement of all the cameras. So when this is done, we will still have some older cameras at the elementary schools. Right now, we have about 189 older cameras, and then we have about 210 new cameras. And what we're seeing when we replace them is we're usually replacing with more because our principals are identifying dead spaces in their building that they would like to have covered, or that our number of cameras does not go down. It just continues to go up, and it's a good investment from a safety perspective. So I just wanted to be clear that this is not about replacing the cameras at the elementary level. It's just the doors. But the cameras are easier to have on two systems than the door access, because that's all pre-programmed remotely. The cameras are accessed by, by the principals for whatever need that they need to be. But that will be our goal, is to get all of the cameras replaced at the elementary level too. One of the things that we kind of want to watch, though, is like replacing too much of this stuff all at once means down the road we'll need to do that again. So we want to space it out a little bit to just make sure that we're not investing so much money at once, and balancing that with what makes sense to have on one system so that we're not using multiple systems at once. So we feel like we're kind of reaching a good balance on this one. This would upgrade all the access for all of the doors, all the exterior perimeter doors at all of the elementary schools and the district office. By doing the entire amount as one, Verkada, our current vendor, gave us a $10,000 discount. If you chose to not do the district office, that would pull off about a $21,000 on this, because we got a $10,000 discount by doing it all at once. If we pull that off, we'll lose the $10,000 discount and need to do $21,000 down the road when we do the district office. I think I covered it all. Do you have any other questions on this one?
So this is for safety.
Correct. This is the reason why we're bringing it forward now, rather than, because that's what I asked Dan about, like, what would be, does it make sense to do this now? Does it make sense to bring it forward as part of our capital projects for the next year, but ask for an early implementation? Bring it forward with our capital projects for next year and just do it on the normal timeline? And when we talked, we feel like this is the best way to move forward.
Two things. You mentioned the cameras. In the course of this conversation, it was identified that some of our cameras right now are not useful.
Correct.
Are those
Yes.
being, those
Yes.
that you
Those-
know? Okay, those that have been noted a concern are being,
Yes.
okay. And then the second that I just want to draw attention to, this was a cost comparison with prior competitive bidding rather than
Correct.
a competitive bid.
I apologize, I missed that part of it. So what we're asking for your approval on is, this one did not go out to bid because it was important to us to stay with the Verkada system that we have currently. And then we also wanted to stay with the same vendor because it's a part of a system. And with that, because we weren't taking it out for a competitive bid, what's really important for us is make sure we got the best pricing. And so what we did is did comparisons with the projects that were bid out, and Verkada had won that, and then basically looked at that on a kind of average cost per door, and we're feeling confident that that we will meet that standard.
So maybe just I think another way to summarize that is, this selection has previously gone through a competitive bid.
Correct.
Right, and so, because we've gone through that process, and it makes sense to stay within the same system for compatibility, visibility across the district, then, we feel comfortable that that's the right choice.
You said it much better than I did.
I know that this isn't specifically what we're voting on, but you had mentioned in the conversation that ideally the other cameras in the elementary school you'd also want to upgrade at some point. As we know, technology outdates itself almost as soon as you get it. So when, timeline-wise, are you kind of thinking big picture? I mean, if you don't have the answer, that's totally cool too, but for the elementary school cameras, so they're compatible, but they're all...
Hopefully within the next 2 years.
Okay.
Because the new cameras are just so technologically superior to the ones that we have now. We want to move earlier rather than later. But then again, as I said, one of the things that we're weighing is trying to be careful about putting too much in one budget year, to make sure that when we replace down the road, unless that's the way we do it going forward, is we just bite off the entire thing district-wide and know that it's going to be a large capital investment.
With that too, it says here that it's easier to use control view the software platforms for both the cameras and door access controls. Is this, I mean, again, it's not necessarily outlined in this, but is there, as we talk about other subscription things, is this like a subscription thing too with this company? That we're maintaining 2 subscriptions with maybe 2 different companies?
Yeah, so we opted for a 10-year license for this because it saved us a dramatic amount of money to go with a 10-year license. But then that also includes the upgrades that will continue coming up, because so much of this is not only, it's the hardware, but it's also the software.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that'll continue to be upgraded every single year.
Okay, thank you.
And Janet, it looks like it's stating that we're reusing some existing hardware.
Correct. On the door systems, so.
Any other questions for Janet?
So I'll make a motion to approve the replacement of the exterior doors as outlined in Closure 15 doors.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Mark, to approve the replacement of exterior door access systems at the elementary and the district office as outlined in enclosure 15 doors and detailed by Janet tonight. Are there any additional questions or comments? Emily, can we do a roll call on this?
Brian,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Ann.
Yes, that upgrades are approved. Thank you. And Janet, you have a budget amendment. We have enclosure 16.
So there will be two attachments with this item, and this is basically looking at the same information two ways. So the one that is up on the screen right now is looking at it within the year. So what we adopted as our original budget in October of this year, and then what are the changes that we've made to our budget to date. And we've talked about some of this a little bit in our quarterly review, but this is just, again, looking at it in a different manner. When this is, what's on the screen right now is Fund 10. We can see that these are basically the Common School Fund. At this point in the year, we get our final allocation for Common School Fund for our LMC, so we got $51,000 more than what we originally budgeted. The thing to notice here is when you look at the bottom line, when you look at the fund balance projections as of the end of the year, all of these budget amendments are budget balance. So there's an offsetting revenue and expenditure and doesn't project to change the bottom line at all.
Janet, are we looking at the right document? Because it says Fund 27.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fund 10, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Common School Fund is what we're seeing here that comes from the state. Federal sources, $122,000, which was, I talked about the Boys and Girls Club, or the after-school grant, and that's budgeting for the dollars, and that, we didn't know if we'd be able to spend all of those funds, and we did. So we have both the revenue and the expenditure there. In addition to that, we have updates on our Carl Perkins grant, school-based mental health. We have a reclassification for LineWise, which is our classroom management, another one of those softwares, classroom management software that is new to us this year. Looking at Fund 27, our change here is the incentive transition grant, and again, revenues and expenditures are offset, so we're not seeing a change in the bottom line. And the last one is in Fund 73, and that is a $50,000 adjustment for other post-employment benefits, classifying both the money that comes as a transfer from Fund 10 and then revenue and expenditure. So again, it's an offset. So then, looking, oh no, I lost the other one. Just a second here. So the second document is the budget amendment in the DPI format. And this is hard to read. It's a bunch of columns and numbers. I really like looking at the last one better. If you remember, we saw that column that was January changes. Now in April, we'll have another column that says April changes and then yet another column that says June. So we're looking at it throughout the year. Obviously, at this point in time, we just have one. This is looking at our budget longitudinally. So you can see what our audited amounts were for 22-23, audited for 23-24, and then budget with the things that I've talked about where budget is for this year. So budget will be updated. Each time you won't see that progression, you'll see that in the other document. And then this includes just how each one, the change in projected fund balance, and you can see there's no projections change here. I think the last document is actually easier to understand, but this is DPI's prescribed format, so this is how we make the amendment. So with that, if you don't have any questions, we would entertain a motion to adopt the amended budget.
I'll make a motion to adopt the amended budget as outlined by Janet and detailed for revisions to the 2024-2025 budget, which is outlined in enclosure 16 budget detail and enclosure 16 budget amendment.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Aaron, to approve the amended budget as outlined in enclosure 16 budget detail as well as 16 budget amendment with the noted revisions by Janet. Are there any additional questions or comments? Can we do a roll call?
Brian?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes, that motion is approved. Thank you, Janet. All right, as we move to, I believe, our personnel report, I am requesting that agenda item C2 be pulled from the personnel report for separate consideration. Are there any other requests to remove items for separate consideration?
Is that C2?
Yes. On the personnel report. All right, what is robots on you?
Thank you, Ann. We have 3 new support positions that we are bringing to the board. Olivia Runyon will be a special education paraprofessional at the high school, who started last week. Lee Zhang will start this week as a reg ed para at Northern Hills, and Mark Shemek as a custodian at the high school. We have 1 unpaid leave request, and then as we finish out our spring contracts for coaches, we have those listed there, as well as Ryan Capwell will be our new boys soccer head coach for next year. As a note, all of those coaches that are under there are returning assistant coaches.
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report with the exception of C2.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Mark, to approve the personnel report with the exception of item C2, which was removed. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The personnel report is approved with the exception of C2.
Sonia, could you cover item C2 now?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report that is now C2.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Mark, to approve item C2 in the personnel report. Take a roll call vote.
Mark?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Tracy?
I guess I'm going to abstain.
Ann?
Abstain.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
Are there any requests to remove items from the consent agenda tonight for separate consideration?
Seeing none, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Aaron, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved as presented. We have no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Eric to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight.
What was the deal with the